Alright, y'all, it's your boy back again with another video. And topic of the day is going to be shape of the league in 5 years. Alright, so y'all know the usual at work and everything. And excuse me, about to hit y'all with an early morning video. Got my Starbucks. So state of the league, right? So this we're in this point in the league, like I said about 10 years ago, there was a transition. And we still had Dirk in his prime, Tim in his prime, Kobe in his prime, and all those greats. Excuse me. And then we had the emergence of Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and a couple others. And as the old guard was starting to die off, it was starting to become, those young guys started to take the mantra and they ran the league. Well, CP3 is 36, Wade is retired, LeBron is 35 going on 36, KD is going to be like 31 or 32, Steph is like 31, 32, Russ is like 31, James Harden is like 31. And so all these guys are about to get ready to start phasing out, right? So what's the lookout for the league? We got AD, and we don't know what's going to behold him in the Lakers in the next couple of years. Giannis, Embiid, Ben Simmons, Zion, Ja, Luka, KP, Kristaps Porzingis, yada, yada, yada. And some of these guys, Devin Booker too, I'm not going to list everybody, but some of these guys are starting to creep into that all-star category. And usually when that happens, they start knocking off some of these other guys that have been in the league for a while. Especially because popularity changes and some of them getting old and getting injury prone, and old injuries start creeping up and start taking more and more of their talent away. So we're about to start this transition period within the next couple of years. There's still going to be some guys like Kawhi who will be around and still be, a force. Paul George maybe, yada, yada, yada. But teams are going to have to start preparing and rebuilding for that window. Particularly KD and LeBron. When those two start to really fall off, that's when the new guard is going to start taking over. Giannis and Luka probably are the best prepared for that situation to happen based on the teams they currently already have. But, so let's just say in 3 years, LeBron is what, like 39, 40? He clearly won't be who he is today. And so what is that going to bode for the newcomers coming forward? So if you're a team, you got to be looking ahead and being like, okay, this is my time to strike. This is when I have to hit gold. Some of these guys like B.I., Alonzo, they're like 23, they'll be 26, they'll be in their prime. So that's going to be their time to like go toe-to-toe with some of their peers, De'Aaron Fox and some of the others. This is going to be ring time for them, Luka. So these teams have to start getting prepared for that. If you don't have your pieces and you're not getting into the playoffs to get that experience, it's not going to bode well for you. So the teams that have had playoff experience is going to be like Minnesota, even though they had it one time, but Russell has played. He also got it in Brooklyn, so he's got playoff experience. He's a little bit tested. The Denver Nuggets, obviously, the Jazz, Orlando Magic. Some of these guys who are getting into the use of playoff basketball, they're going to be ahead of the curve compared to some of these other teams. And if you're a GM, you got to start thinking like, man, even if we're not going to win in the playoffs, Like the Celtics, they're not going to win right now, but they got to get in and get that experience, because that's going to carry them in the next couple of years when the rest of these stars start dying off. And you got teams like the Pels, who their core has never seen the playoffs. Lonzo, B.I., and Zion, Josh Hart. Josh Hart's 25 going on 26. Never been in playoffs. He's basically in his prime. B.I. and Lonzo just turned 23 this year. Never been in the playoffs. Jamal Murray has been in the playoffs, and I think they're the same age. He's been in the playoffs at least 3-4 years. You know, they got that experience. You know, so it's about time. If you're a team, or if you got a young team, you got to be pushing your chips in to get it to the playoffs. So the Pels, like, even though the West is stacked, they got to find some way to get in there. They're going to have to make a play. They got to get somebody that can help push them into like that 6 to 8 seed. Because if they wait another year to get into that playoffs, they'll be 24 years old with no playoff experience. And then they're going to end up getting that playoff experience when they're like 25 or 26. Right then, you're like at the beginning stages of your prime, when you're at your peak. It's important for the development of these guys going forward. They get into the playoffs. And you got players like Jason Tatum with the Celtics and stuff. They've been in the playoffs for years now, like every fucking year. And so they know the game. And it's helping their development and helping get them ready. Orlando Magic have been in. Granted, they haven't been able to get out the first round, but it's helping with the development. And their guys are right at the same level. So if you haven't gotten into the playoffs by now, you got to start being like, look, we need to make some plays. We need to get up in there. Even if we get swept, they need to taste it so they get used to it and understand it's a different ball game. And you know, there's teams like Sacramento, the Kings. They haven't been to the playoffs. They got close, but no cigar. And you know, Memphis, you know, they're a very young team. Really just started doing something this year. They couldn't get it to the playoffs, but you know, they may have a little bit more time. Some of these guys who are in their like mid-20s, like Luka and them, played in the playoffs. They took 2 games off the Clippers. They may have won that series, but they got to get into the playoffs. Luka, I'm less concerned about because he's basically a 25-year-old as far as experience, NBA pro experience would be concerned, because that's how much experience he's had playing overseas in pro leagues. So he's ready. He's good to go. KP to me, I think he's good to go. I can't remember if he got into the playoffs in New York, but the talent, you can clearly see he's ready. You know, so the outlook for these teams is they're going to have to start building to get into the playoffs now. And the longer it takes for you to get into the playoffs, you're stunning the growth of your players to some degree. You know, that, and everybody will tell you their playoff experience is different. I remember D-Wade said he didn't feel like he belonged in the league until he got to the playoffs. And his first game, he dropped like 30 or something like that. He's like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. That confidence is necessary going forward. The Golden State Warriors, before they ever got to the championship, they got into the playoffs, and they was giving teams hell. And it helped build those guys up, so when they actually went to the finals the next year and they won, they got that experience, and they were able to take over, do their thing. And I'm thinking, I believe Steph was 24 when they lost in the second round. I think they lost to the Spurs. I can't remember. It's been a while. But then that next year, they went, beat everybody. Then the next year, they lost. Then they got KD, and, you know, rest is history. But this is the time, if you're a young team and you're like in that lower to middle 20s age, that's when your guys need that playoff experience. So some of these teams that have been on the bottom looking in, Minnesota, they've been in once with Jimmy Butler. You know, Pels haven't been in at all. The Hawks haven't been in. And now you got Miami that just got like to the finals. You know, that's going to bode well for them going forward. So if you are a GM or a team looking to build for the future, and your guys are in their 20s now, your window to grow is shrinking. And I get that, you know, there's a lot of beast teams with vets like LeBron and stuff and everything, but that's not the important thing. The thing is they need to understand how the postseason is, because that's a whole different mindset, whole different way to prep, and you don't understand it until you've went through it. And it doesn't matter throughout history. Every NBA pro has said this: regular season is not the same thing as the playoffs. And as being a Pale fan, you got to start to be like, look, we need Zion, B.I., and Lonzo in the postseason. They have to have all the chips pushed in, and we need to see them grow and get used to this. And we also need to see who's going to rise and who's going to shrink, because you don't want to be 26, 27, finally get into the postseason, and you up 3-1 and you choke. Or you don't want them get into the postseason and they get mauled by teams younger than them because they got more playoff experience, even if they're older, and they're better prepared. So, you know, going forward, we should be looking forward to seeing some teams, particularly like the Pels, who have been like try to push some chips in, move some parts to get into the playoffs. So, you know, I think that's what Stan Van Gundy is going to try to do in the Pels front office. Like I said, it's going to be hell and hot water because that West is stacked. That West is stacked. And honestly, I think getting a high seed in the West is out of the question for at least the next 2 years. Between the Clippers, the Lakers, Golden State, and Denver, and then depending on what the Houston Rockets do, Houston Rockets, I don't see how you get a high seed. Like, I mean, what's going to be money for a team is that 5th, 6th seed. That 7, 8 seed is going to be like instant going home. But that 5th, 6th seed, when you get the matchup with the 3rd or the 4th, that's where you're going to get your money in. And if I was like the Pels or any one of those teams, I'm trying to build a team that can get into that 5th or 6th seed so we can, like, play a round or two. You know, if in that 5th, 6th seed, you got a chance to upset the apple cart and make some noise for real. But if you got to play the Lakers or the Clippers or the Golden State Warriors in the first round, like, I know a lot of people like to get on Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the truth in the playoffs. That boy's the truth. Like, even Dame ain't got nothing for him. Like, we seen what they did the other year when they lost to Toronto in the finals. We saw what they did. They were down the entire series, and just like by double digits, it came back and beat them in the second half. It's just like, that's players, and that's the other thing you got to do. You got to figure out who your gamers are. You know, players like Steph, they just play the fucking game. You know, when the chips on the table, they show up. I know people are like, oh, but he ain't got the clutch shot. You don't have to hit the clutch shot. You don't have to. It don't have to be a thing. Like, you don't want the game to go down to clutch shots. Let's just be honest. You want to win convincingly. And Steph straight up just gamed them. You know, and that's what you want to find out. Who are your gamers? You know, you may get to the playoffs and find Lonzo is the gamer. Like, when the stage is the brightest, Lonzo is better than B.I. or Zion. But you won't know that unless you get there and see what it's like. So, or we might find out that Zion is like who we think he is. You know, in the playoffs, he might take it to a whole nother level. But they need that experience. All young teams need that experience. So, going forward, if you're like a developing team, if you're a fan of a team that's on the come up and you're getting players in their 22, 23, 24, you got to get to the playoffs. Not getting to the playoffs is not an excuse. You know, you got to get there. It's needed. So, just another quick video. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.